One of the best things about being an indie game is that you get to try new and unique ideas without having to copy and paste the same devoid of personality open world and hope for the best, going bigger's better, look at me, for quite a lot of the AAA titles that get released. Personal opinion, sorry. Seedlings does this by doing several really interesting things, but the first thing that I want to talk about is what smacks you in the face, and it's the visual art style of this game. What the developer for Seedlings has done is taken video and photography of the New Zealand forestry areas and rock formations, and then superimposed it into the game and made it into a puzzle platformer. So, as you traverse around the still photography, different logs are ledges, and you're trying to kind of roll your sentient seed that you control around the different parts, a little bit like a marble maze, a little bit like a mini golf game, which I'll kind of get onto in a second. But what was really beautiful and really engrossing about this is that it's all kind of down at site level. So everything that you would kind of take for granted as being small tiny rocks or tree roots or little bits of soil now is really up in your face and fully detailed. And so it makes the tiny world feel magical and huge. But it also does this cool thing where sometimes there's video footage going on at the same time as still photography. So there's an area where you're trying to cross a stream, for example, and the stream is full video. And so you've got water kind of going past and you're like, wah, 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 whilst also still traversing all of the gaps and kind of edges that are still photography. And it does that quite a few times. And each time I was always like, oh, impressive. And I know it shouldn't be, but it just made the world feel quite magical and unique, because you don't normally feel like you're traversing through a fully FMV style video setting. And it reminded me of how I felt with the game Idea that released earlier this year, where you are marbling around aerial footage of a village. This has a very similar kind of marvel to it, but just from a low down in the ground in the soil camera perspective. The other thing that I found really cool with Seedlings was it's a puzzle platformer, but it feels like a 2D mini golf game. And that's because the sentient seed that you take control of that kind of glows this radioactive yellow hum is a bit like a virus trying to find hosts. And so because all it can do is kind of just roll around back and forth and not do much by itself, you find various different kind of pieces of tree bark or something like that you then take control of once you roll into them. And each one has different mechanics. So some can jump, some can kind of be used as a stepping stone to try and get you higher, but all of them have the ability pretty much to spit you out. And this is where the mini golf kind of reference comes in, because quite often it's about moving your thing that you've taken over, the piece of bark, into the right area so that you can then press and hold the spit button, and then a little trajectory will come out and it will kind of get bigger and bigger and bigger and wider until you're trying to work out when to let go and spit out your seed so that it can then fly onto the next platform or fly through a gap or collect a piece of vine that you can then swing on and fly off to another area. Or it could be that you're trying to dive into a little weird mushroomy cocoon so that you can then start to change some of the environment and maybe move some of the logs or branches back and forth so that it creates a different path for you to then try and get to. And this is how all of the puzzles work in Seedlings. There's no combat, there's no any kind of, there's peril, but not in the traditional sense, because it's all around how do I get my seed to traverse all of the different logs and bits of mud or water, or to avoid the insects that are kind of patrolling an area going back and forth. It's that kind of thing. So puzzle, 95% of the game, about 5% in terms of actual I need to be very good and precise with my platforming, because you can kind of get away with a lot of the stuff in this game so long as you think ahead of what you're trying to do. And then you'll traverse through the forest and escape hopefully out the other side if all goes well. Seedlings is a relatively short game. I completed it in about an hour and a half. There are some collectibles that I did miss along the way, which I can dive back into through chapter select and try and complete off. But it's one of those games that A, was quite cheap anyway, but felt like more than the sum of its parts. And it's because of the magical vibe with the photography and the video footage. The soundtrack was quite cool and ethereal and otherworldly as well at the same time. And just the way how the puzzles were all set up, I didn't feel like I'd played Seedlings before. And there's something to be said about a game looking and feeling and playing like a truly unique experience. And that's why I want to share that although Seedlings is a short experience, it's absolutely a worthy one, I think, is of your time. And I do recommend it to most gamers that will enjoy an indie, atmospheric puzzle platform experience. Higher Plane Games is part of the Higher Plane Network, a completely independent media outlet supported by people like you. The goal is to create the best possible content that cultivates a richer indie scene for games as well as music and entertainment. To find out more and to get involved, visit patreon.com/higherplane-network. Your support makes all the difference, and in return you'll gain access to bonus content and downloads. Thank you for watching.